man. How can I have a good day?
I'm Glynn Vernon. Look at me. What do you see? Someone who can't talk properly. A quadriplegic stuck in a wheelchair who needs other people to do most things for him. Well, yeah, that's all true, but that's not me. My real problems are I don't have enough money and I don't have enough sex. Those are my problems. Does that surprise you? Well, perhaps it shocks you. Well, it shouldn't, because I'm a pretty ordinary bloke, really, and my problems are pretty ordinary as well. So if you are shocked, that's your problem, not mine. So who is he, this man in his 40s with cerebral palsy and ordinary problems? Well, I'm the son of a Yorkshire miner, brought up on a council estate just outside Sheffield, one of 4 kids. It was a happy childhood. Yeah, it was a very happy childhood, and I can remember having a thirst for knowledge even then. Those early years were a real struggle for my mum and dad. Most doctors then had never heard of cerebral palsy, so they simply said that I was mentally retarded. That's an attitude that doesn't change. Fortunately, my mum didn't listen, and she taught me to read. By the age of 6, I could read anything. Yeah, just about anything. At 8, I went away to residential school down south. It was a good school, and I left with a few O-levels, but I missed Yorkshire. Well, if you want to play cricket for your county and then England, you need to be there. It's quite a frightening time leaving school for someone with CP. I mean, everybody's concerned for you, want to do the best for you, want to protect you. Now, Glynn, you'd be much better off in hostel. Well, it might have made them feel more comfortable, but not me. I can't remember anybody saying, "What do you want to do, Glynn?" Except my mum and dad. Anyway, I decided to try life on the outside. I took a couple of A-levels, and then I applied to Sheffield University.
Well, Mr. Vernon, you've obviously worked very hard indeed to gain the necessary qualifications to take a university degree. Yeah, but it's going to be very different at university, that is. The course isn't really designed for the disabled. I'm sure you can appreciate that.
No.
Pardon? Oh, you can foresee problems, quite.
No.
You see, you're going to be working with some very able people indeed.
I'm very able.
Look, please don't take this personally, Mr. Vernon. We'd love to accept you if we could, but we feel certain that you'd find it extremely difficult to keep up with the others. Believe me, it's only your interests we have at heart. I'm sure you understand that.
No, I do understand.
Quite. I knew you would.
And that from a Yorkshire university. Well, lucky for me, the Open University started up at about the same time, and they didn't make the same kind of assumptions as Sheffield. But I showed Sheffield. I threw myself into that degree course, and instead of the usual 5 or 6 years, I got my BA in social science in 3. It's a funny thing, disability. I mean, there's obvious forms of it, and there's others that are much more subtle. I mean, I've got an obvious disability, but it's the other kind, the social disability, that really does the damage, and I share that with a lot of other people. The unemployed, for instance, or deprived children. I mean, that's disability caused by political or economic factors. We're all seen as being a bit less than whole, part of a big band of have-nots. I mean, the state offers us all help, but it's just enough help, the absolute minimum needed to let us get by on, no more than that. And we're supposed to feel grateful for it or even guilty. And the rest of society, the haves, need to see us as being worthy of that help, while they hang on to a feeling of superiority or of having an advantage over us. Well, if they didn't have an advantage, everybody would want to be unemployed or disabled, wouldn't they? So really, I've got 2 forms of disability. The economic one, and the fact that I use a wheelchair to get around. But my being unable to walk isn't really the disability. It's that society knows what my problems are and refuses to do anything about them. Yeah, they were important years, those Open University years. It was then that I met, or rather re-met, Jill. She was really the girl next door. She came from Aston, same village as me. She's able-bodied, but having worked with disabled people, she had a good understanding of disability. What I mean is that she didn't refuse to see disability. A lot of people do, you know. Either that, or else they don't stop staring at you. Some supposedly perfect people can suddenly become very blind when an imperfect person comes on the scene. They just don't see you. Sometimes I feel like I'm living in a goldfish bowl. So, Jill and I decided to get married. In the church, as it happens.
Glynn, this is a very delicate subject, but I'm sure you'll understand my reasons for asking. The point is, can you actually consummate this marriage?
Yeah, I can.
Did you say yes?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, you did, I see. Are you absolutely sure?
Yeah, I do.
You do understand what I mean? Because of your condition, are you certain you can have sex?
Yeah, I didn't.
You see, that is an essential part of marriage, and I want you to be absolutely sure. Now, you must be honest with me, and if you can't consummate this marriage, then I cannot perform the sacrament. I can't marry you.
Despite the Inquisition, we were married, and we set up home in Sheffield. That's another thing some people struggle with. Disabled people having able-bodied friends. And to marry an able-bodied woman, well, I ask you. I choose my friends like the same way as everybody else does, on their beliefs, their values, and their empathy. As you can imagine, over the course of my life, I've had a lot of contact with services of various kinds. And many professionals are distant, aloof. But it's the ordinary care workers that I respect most. Untrained, often lowly paid, usually married women. But once they've got over their initial unease and discover that you're just like everybody else, a really friendly relationship seems to develop. I mean, they have to do some pretty intimate personal things, such as bathing and toileting. But it's handled with great sensitivity on both sides. It's the kind of relationship you get in families. That was a big disappointment to both Jill and me. The fact that we couldn't have children. It turned out that I was infertile. I wonder how many able-bodied men have to see a psychologist when they go to an infertility clinic.
So, Mr. Vernon, you want to have children. Why is that?
Because I couldn't.
Couldn't there be something deeper underlying it, something very personal to you?
No, I couldn't.
But your condition, Mr. Vernon, doesn't that have a bearing on it? Could it be that the reason you want children is directly related to your condition? Could it be that you would like to have an able-bodied child to do all the things you're incapable of doing? That you want to live the life you never had through your child?
I couldn't even bring myself to answer the questions. Well, she didn't listen to me in the first place anyway. I could see her impatience because I'm slow in talking and not too clear. Like a lot of people, she pretended to understand what I was saying. I mean, I don't mind how many times somebody says pardon so long as they finally understand me. And not being able to have children was a major blow. And finally, after 7 years, Jill left. One day I had everything and next day I had nothing. I desperately needed help. That's when the services came in.
Well, this really is an unfortunate situation, Glynn, isn't it? I don't quite know what's best. Really, the most important thing is to put your safety first, don't you think? I mean, it's much too big a risk to leave you where you are now. What if there was an emergency or something? Do you know, I think you'd feel a lot happier with someone around 24 hours a day. Then you wouldn't have to worry if something went wrong. You're going to take a lot of looking after, aren't you? I wouldn't like it on my conscience if something went wrong, I can tell you. It's your interests I have in mind, I promise you. Do you know what I think is best? Yes, definitely. That's to get you into a Part 3. Yes. We'll get you into a home, shall we? Pardon, Glynn? Glynn, let's go through this again.
Fortunately, I had a good GP. He asked me what I wanted, which was obviously to stay in my own home, and then brought in the necessary support to keep me there. It was the most painful time of my life, but from it came a present attitude. I suppose I'm very political. No, I know I'm very political. I'd like to see a society in which there's no unemployment, where all people are able to fulfil themselves, a much more equitable society which doesn't operate on a first-past-the-post philosophy. In my ideal world, I might have been a politician, but there's no point in even considering ideal worlds or what might have been. You are what you are, and there's no point in wishing and wondering. I mean, perhaps Jeff Boycott missed out on his ideal batting partner, but he did quite well without my help. I now live in Milton Keynes. I know, everybody's joke city, but if you were disabled, you wouldn't think it's so much of a joke. It's a city built with disabled people in mind, and the whole place is accessible. Do you know, most cinemas in this country won't allow anybody in a wheelchair to go to the pictures without an escort. They say we're a fire hazard. Funny that. I've never heard of a disabled person bursting into flames. But who cares if you can't get into a phone box? They never work anyway. This flat I live in is one of 24 which make up an independent living scheme operated by the Spastics Society. They're not all lumped together, but spread around this small estate. We're all linked by intercom to 2 offices in close-by houses. The society pays the rent and the main bills, such as phone and electricity, and supply the care staff to help look after me. I have choices over some things, like food, and I buy my own. But I don't have a choice about the time I get up, or when I eat. Before I came here, I'd made a discovery about myself. I'm good with computers. I took a TOPS course in computer programming and sailed through it. Ironic, innit? I'm good with the things, but I really don't like them. I prefer people. So now I have my own small business as an Amstrad agent. Don't make much money, but it would be nice to succeed, to show that I can do it, and eventually make enough to be totally independent. 50 quid a week's not much to live on. Although I don't like computers, I have to admit the word processor has transformed my life. It's enabled me to write quickly and efficiently, even novels. I suppose you could say that I've sorted my life out. But sometimes there are things which are beyond your control. Like the night I come back from the pub and the battery went flat underneath an isolated bridge down the road. I sat there all night, desperate for a wee and very cold, and the only things I saw all night were one cat and an earwig. On the other hand, there's advantages. I mean, down by the lake I had a puncture, so I had to ask for help, and I finished up having tea and biscuits with the people. And then on the way back, the battery went flat and the same thing happened again. Perhaps that's a qualification for being disabled. You have to like tea and biscuits. Yeah, you do meet people. Kids in particular, little kids. I love them because there's no artifice about them. No embarrassment. They're just open and honest. It's the parents who can be a problem.
Hello.
Hello. Why are you in that chair?
Well,
Why not?
I need you.
Pardon?
I need you.
Why do you speak like a teddy bear?
Sammy, it's rude to stare, you know that. I'm sorry, I'm really very sorry. Kids, what can you do with them? Come on. I told you before not to stare. It's not nice.
So, yeah, you mean left to the table, not the table again.
So here I am, Glynn Vernon, who happens to be disabled. Not disabled Glynn Vernon. Sure, I get comments and gestures from people which could be hurtful, but they're not. And that's because I've got great confidence in myself and in people generally. I've tried to understand myself, and that means trying to understand much wider issues. So don't give me a pity, and don't patronise me, because I don't need that, and I certainly don't want it. I'm Glynn Vernon. That's all. Just Glynn Vernon.
Hello, Anthony. Hope I like me. Hello, Lila. I said you party. How you doing? You Lennon.